Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition to the Point Podcast. Everybody's doing well. We're here on a Thursday, normally Tuesday. Technical difficulties Tuesday. The internet just said no thanks to yours truly. But we are back today, and as always, my great co-host Shamus Moore, or should I say, the biggest Michael Bunting super fan that I know. Shay, how are you feeling about the Maple Leafs preseason thus far?
Good. Nice little hat trick for Michael Button. Kind of getting you little shivers. He's going to play, maybe top six. Is he a 30 goal scorer? Who knows? But no, I'm excited. It's good. I know it's only Ottawa and they're not much to brag about, but still I'm happy to see another dub in the preseason. But what were your thoughts? I don't know if you get to watch any. I know.
No, I did watch some of it last night, flip between that and the Blue Jays game. But he's good. Camp, I think, could be a good third line center. I'd rather play Camp at center than Kerfoot because, as you know, I have no faith in him playing center.
You don't love Alex Kerfoot? Is that what you're saying?
And I don't love him. No, I like him better on the wing. I'll give him that. But my big worry for those type guys is I don't worry about Bunting scoring, but Camp, Mikheyev, a lot of those guys are similar where their hands are, oven mitts. And I kind of worry about offensive production from the bottom six.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest struggle this year. There's going to have to be, I don't know, someone just coming out of the blue. I hope this Andre Kasha guy kind of comes up big, but he might even have to play in the top six now that Hyman's gone. So it's going to be a wild win, but that's what the preseason's for. Kind of give it a little feel. Maybe I'm wrong. Has Robertson even played yet?
He played last night.
Yeah. How did he look?
I think he's a good player, but I don't think he's NHL ready yet. There's something about, he hasn't played a ton of hockey in the last year, to be fair to Nick with COVID and everything. But if I was the GM and I get Toronto's probably in a little bit of a desperate position here because they know they need to play well, I would start him in the American League. I don't know if they will, but that if I was running the show, that's probably what I would do because I don't think he's NHL ready right now.
Because you could probably say that he's for prospects, or even if you want to call him a prospect, he's probably their biggest prospect forward wise right now, right? I don't
Absolutely.
think there's anyone else that takes the place. So.
Yeah, their prospect pool is pretty slim. I would say Robertson and then Amirov, last year's first rounder, up front, and then I don't know how they still call this guy a prospect, but Timothy Lilligren in his 83rd training camp, still trying to crack a roster here, but I think he'll make the team as a seventh defenseman because I don't see a whole lot of depth. I don't see guys that if he doesn't make the team this year, I don't think he ever will because Mac Hallwell, you see him making the team. I don't love that situation. So I would say Lilligren is another guy with Sandin that will be on the Leafs roster come day one.
Yeah, it's kind of sad because neither one of those guys to me is a bona fide NHLer yet. But with opportunity, maybe they get a little time and maybe they turn out to be something more. But who knows? Really, it'll be interesting who Dubas cuts.
Yeah, no, there'll have some interesting decisions down the stretch here. Today we're talking about episodes 4 and 5 of season 4 of Breaking Bad. Last week we got into Walter kind of, trying to, well, for lack of a better word, kill Gus, get close to him, get in position to get rid of his threat of him potentially losing his life. We see that Skyler and Walter have purchased a car wash. So that's big news. But really, Shay, the bigger news here is just Jesse and his spiral back into drugs and just to back into a really, really negative frame of mind.
Yeah, if you were listening last week, that Jesse's kind of turned his house into this mosh pit like party house where people just come and go. They just basically abuse the house. They abuse themselves really with drugs and alcohol. Homeless people, bikers, anyone. We've seen a big fat businessman like we were talking about last week. He's still there this week, and yeah, it's just all kinds of bad things going on around Jesse as a coping mechanism for him killing Gail, essentially.
Yeah, hasn't dealt with it, and we'll get more into Jesse in this episode. And what continues to happen, his lack of awareness in his own life. But we start episode 4 entitled Bullet Points with our good buddy Mike Ehrmantraut, and he is in the back of a Los Pollos Hermanos truck. It's a shipping truck. We see them. He's surrounded by, it looks like chicken buckets, and he's sitting back there. But it's a truck that's it's got a freezer. It's got to keep everything cold. So he's all bundled up. He's got gloves, hats, mitts on, and through the drive we hear tires squeal, and then some communication in Spanish, and then all of a sudden bullets start to fly.
Yeah, single bullet. And then, Mike's kind of at this point perked up in the freezer. And what he does is he kind of gets behind a couple boxes, and all of a sudden 2 machine guns just start going off inside. So at first when you're watching this, you're thinking, well, maybe they're trying to steal the meth, because we know that's how they've been transporting the meth, by putting them in these batter buckets and then moving them across the country, really. And you're thinking, oh, they're probably just trying to steal it and then resell it. But that's not the case. They're actually just trying to destroy the truck itself, not realizing that Mike's in there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they're clearly sending a message that somebody's sending a message to Gus, basically, because they know how he ships it, like you said, and they're kind of sending a message there. But as they fire multiple rounds through this truck, they open the door, and then 2 bullets. Mike has shot them both dead, but in the process, he's lost the top of his ear. A bullet has got him, went through, and he's lost. Basically, if you're looking on video, this part of your ear is now ajar for poor Mike.
Yeah, come out pretty unscathed though, for taking what seemed like probably 50 to 60 rounds to the truck. But it also just shows how tough Mike is, because he's just like, man, he's not wincing in pain. He just kind of touches it, sees the blood, and he's like, man, that's just about it. So yeah, it's an interesting start to the episode. Definitely gonna leave you thinking, okay, well, there's definitely problems clearly between the cartel and Gus, because seems like a direct attack on him.
Yeah, and just knowing you as well as I do, and we've watched a lot of movies together and shows, I love the cartel angle, and I know you do too, because we've watched so many of these shows together, and how interesting they can be. I love that this is intertwined in this season.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it gets more and more deep rooted. And yeah, you're right. I love, I remember when Narcos first came out, one of the better Netflix, original series. And yeah, I just fell in love with it right away, because, this kind of stuff goes on, and, Pablo Escobar and the crazy things that he's done. And yeah, no, the cartel angle it's unbelievable. Another really, really good cartel movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Juggy, is Cicero. Have you ever seen that before?
Yeah, very good.
It's a great Benicio del Toro movie that, if you haven't, if you haven't watched anything about the cartel in a while, that's something you should take a look into. But yeah, no, this is a big battle between, you can see the 2 grounds, not only between Gus and the cartel, but you can really feel like it's kind of the state's size of the organized crime versus the Mexican side on the other side of the border.
Yeah, very good point. So yeah, that's how it starts. Pivot to Skyler, and we know she's bought the car wash, but we really don't know how they're going to explain how they can buy a car wash. She's a unemployed, a new mother / bookkeeper, and he's basically a former teacher, because he's laid off at this point, but he's not getting paid. So she's researching gambling in the middle of the night. She gets out of bed, she's writing out some thoughts, and when she gets up in the morning, she tells us that she tells Walt the next day that they plan to tell Hank and Marie about Walter, and that he basically had addiction to counting cards.
Yeah, coming clean, but not fully coming clean, as they've kind of mentioned. They're finally going to expose it. That way they can come out about the car wash, how they paid for it, of course. And it's really, really funny. The title of this episode is called Bullet Points, because she's got these kind of almost scripts down to a T, where she's going to execute perfectly how she's going to explain to Marie and Hank and Walter Jr., who they're telling for the first time, what happened to Walter, and why he was kind of crazy there for quite a while. As you can remember, he walked at one point as an alibi. He kind of walked through a market with no clothes on, just to kind of prove his insanity. And they're going to tie in all those factors together, so they kind of have this very descriptive plan. Walter doesn't seem much use of it, but Skylar's pretty got her heart on it that it's going to work.
Yeah, she's written it out, Quentin Tarantino style, word for word, and they start practicing their lines, and he's so not, he hates it, and he goes like, do I really have to say sorry twice? Like, I would never say that. And he goes, terribly. And he's just complaining the whole, and it's this funny scene because he's just so negative. And she goes, we need to sell this. And he kind of, he does his own thing. He finally finds his voice, so to speak. And he goes, he's so sorry. And he kind of writes in his own sentence and saying it how he'd like it to be said.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. Like Skylar's clearly trying to make it seem like he's very apologetic and very sorry for what he did, but Walter is not at all. In fact, he's if anything more proud that he's been able to provide for his family in a matter, that's not probably ethical, but at the same time, he just doesn't want to admit that he's been doing something wrong, which is kind of what this whole script is about.
Right. So after they figured it out, they're also telling Walter, like you said, Walter Jr., so he doesn't really know this. So they get to Hank's, and we see he's now in a wheelchair. He's moving around. Things seem to be getting better. He's moving around by himself in the chair. And when they get there, Marie and Skyler go to get dinner ready. And he shows Walt and Jr. his minerals, but also he shows Walter some of his case. And part of that case is a video of Gail singing, and you can just see Walter's face kind of drop and get very white when we see Gail singing on the screen.
Yeah, the whole ghost of Gail just doesn't seem to want to go away from Walter. And you're right, he's petrified. He's thinking, oh God, like they're looking into his murder. And more importantly, Hank, his brother-in-law, is looking into the murder. What is he digging up? Is he making the connection with the meth? Because for a while we knew Hank was working on the meth case, with Gomi, and things got to be spinning. But it is a funny video. I don't know what language was you think he was speaking or singing in that video.
I was wondering if if it's like Klingon or something like that from Star Trek. Yeah. It was hard. It was hard to say, but I thought maybe Klingon. But yeah, clearly Gale's an eccentric dude.
Yeah, but he plays it to a T, which you gotta love. And Hank just comes out and says it. He thinks that he's found his guy. The blue meth. This Heisenberg that Hank's been chasing all along. And we see in this episode that Hank's kind of come to terms with the fact that he's caught his magnum opus, you could say, in this drug lord that he's been chasing for so long.
Right. Yeah. You're right. He's at peace. He even tells Tim later in the episode, I'm done with the case. Like, I appreciate you keep me in the loop, but I don't want to be. But yeah, and we get to this in the next episode, Shay, but Walt is uncomfortable that that this Gale is getting credit for something that he produced, that he's the master chef.
Yeah, his hubris really, ends up being his downfall in this next episode. And we'll get into that after, but you're right. Yeah, he hates the fact, kind of like before when Jesse tried to go off and do the same recipe Walter did, he was almost offended by it, even though he was technically at that point out of the game. And it was really just a tactic for Gus to get him back in by, cooking meth that was under his label, but technically wasn't made by him.
Right. And another big interesting thing is they're looking at through his lab book. And in the book, there's this interesting little piece where it says, to WW, my star, my heart. And Hank says, I wonder who that could be. Willy Wonka, Walter White, question mark. And Walter's just like, yeah, you got me. But Walter's a smart dude. He's quick, and he says, you know who it is, Hank? It's Walt Whitman, the poet.
Yeah, well, the poet that Gail's kind of spun off this poet to Walter quite a while ago. Good for him from having the memory, because he was able to use that right away. There was even a poem in the book too, so it kind of covered that all for Walter. But this is another time where Hank he basically exposes Walter right to his face, and Walter is kind of like and kind of outsmarts him just by a little bit, and obviously kind of leads Hank astray.
Yeah, Hank has had him a few times, and it's just the trust that he has. And to be fair to Hank, we trust who we trust. You would never suspect somebody that like a Walter, who's just a teacher. I think anyway, Shay, that he would do something like, especially somebody that's in your inner circle. If you think somebody pretty well, you wouldn't suspect that they break bad, so to speak.
Fair. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I wouldn't peg you to go do this, or maybe vice versa. Maybe you would for me, but we'll dive into that.
I have my suspicions. I have my suspicions.
A lot of people
do.
No,
basically what this this dinner comes down to is basically them telling them, like we said, and they're reading off this script that Skyler just so elegantly put it, and really comes down to it, and they do a great job of executing it, but obviously they don't get the reaction maybe they thought. Instead of being maybe upset or sad, they're more happy. If anything, Walter Jr. is gonna that's sick, Dad. How'd you do it? Why'd you stop? And Walter kind of has to go, oh, I'm deeply ashamed of myself. I really shouldn't have done this, son.
Yeah, and Walter's defense, there's a bigger question, Chase. Should he be if you made a bunch of money gambling like this, would you be ashamed?
I mean, no, I don't think I would be. I mean, if you said you had a real problem and you're fessing up to that, yes. But the fact that he did so well, it kind of goes against the fact that, is it really a problem if you're making money from it?
Right.
But Walter, in the same sense, they're trying to put to bed this how you came up with buying the whole car wash, right? So now he's in not relapse. I guess he's in rehab. I guess you could say, because earlier in this episode, they I guess to keep up with this image, they actually did end up going to like an AA like meeting for gambling addicts.
Right. So yeah, they got every nook and cranny covered. Skylar's very thorough, and to her credit, she's helping Walter a lot, because without her, his story would be a lot more loose and would have a lot more holes in it. And she knows that, because he's a loose character. But Walt's kind of freaked out that Hank's still looking into this, that they could possibly be connected. And he goes over to Jesse's, and he's looking for Jesse, and it's a mess in there. More and more graffiti. They got more, like you said, terrible people in there. And they get in there, and Jesse's in the process of shaving people's heads. He's now got the shaved head look going, and he's shaving this weirdo's head on the stairs, and he's just not even giving Walt the time of day.
No, yeah. So Walter's over there basically to get every single detail of, did you lay any fingerprints, anything you can tell them about Gail's murder, so that they're on the same page. And we got to remember that Jesse is just traumatized by this. He's he doesn't want to talk about it. He wants to just bury it deep down and not bring it back up. So he's, like you said, he's not giving Walter anything, and even goes as far as says, who wants to make $100, and gives two weirdos money to get Walter the hell out of his house.
He still doesn't want to deal with it, and kicks him out. So what does Walt do when he panics? You go see Better Call Saul. He goes to see Saul and about Jesse, and he tells him to chill out. But, Walt goes off and says he's kind of a liability at this point, because he knows everything. And the more he acts like this, Gus is gonna see him as a liability, and Gus is gonna kill him. He's not gonna let him, he's not going to let him roam free and be a really a loose end for him. He'll be killed, sooner than we think.
Yeah, but to Jesse right now, he's just rotting away basically from the inside out. And someone like that is definitely a liability. Someone who doesn't care if they live or die. Well, what's it to them if they if they get caught? Say he was to get caught by the police. Well, if he doesn't care about living or dying, then what's it to him if he ends up spilling the beans on Gus or Walter, or for that matter, and ruining the whole operation? So, Mike ends up meeting with Gus. I think it's in this episode, and basically says, this kid doesn't care. He doesn't care if he lives or dies. I really think he's a major liability, and we'll get to that in a bit. I think I missed the part where Gus and who's Victor's replacement?
Tyrese.
Yeah. So Mike and Tyrese bring something back for Jesse in the meantime, because he's, like he said, he doesn't really care what he gains or loses, doesn't really care about money. As you see, he's throwing money around. And at one point, someone goes up and steals basically a whole cache, about $70,000 to $80,000 from Jesse. And he looks in the drawer and closes the drawer, and it doesn't faze him one bit. He doesn't really care.
Yeah, that's quite the scene, because you're right. He leaves to go to work, and he tells this crazy meth head who's talking to himself, basically. He's talking about zombies and walls and whatever he's going on. And he says, go get pizza for everybody. When I come back, there better be pizza. And he goes up to get cash, but there's this guy with a face tat. And I got tattoos, but I don't got a face tat. That's more hardcore than me. He's sitting there, you can sit there, he's sitting there listening. He's just like, and he sees him come back with a bunch of cash. And when Jesse comes home, he grabs this kind of this chick on the stairs. They go up to play, Mario Kart DUI or something. And he stares at his drawer where the money is. It's completely empty. He has no reaction. None. Like he doesn't do anything. He just continues to play the game. Yeah,
exactly. And it doesn't faze him whatsoever. And, he goes to bed that night and wakes up to Mike in his house, basically saying, get the hell up and get downstairs, because, this ends now. And Jesse too, they have this guy basically tied up, beat up, and in the middle of his living room, all the people who were there formerly kind of all gone. And it's just Mike, Tyrese, and this tied up guy. And Mike just says, here's your money. What do you think we're going to do with this guy now? And Jesse goes, I don't really care. And, just basically goes back to bed. I'm done with this.
Yeah. He even calls their bluff. He goes, I know you're not going to kill him because he's got a blindfold on. And it's a ballsy thing to say. And you go, this guy's scared, petrified on the floor. They mentioned that he pissed himself. And but Jesse's just so out of it. And like you said, he goes to meet with Gus. He says something has to be done with him. He can't. He's too much of a risk. And we see that Walt, we kind of pivot. It's a sharp cut. Walter showing up to the lab. And Jesse is a no-show. He's calling his cell. He can't reach him. So he's kind of looking at the camera, being like, where the hell is he? Like, where's Jesse? And he leaves the lab in just a panic state, driving as fast as he possibly can. Even on the drive to Jesse's, he calls Skyler and leaves this she's not home, but leaves a message about how he loves her and he loves the kids, and he was thinking about them, because in my mind, Shay, Walt's thinking they're killing Jesse and I'm not going to be, long after.
Yeah, he's really just kind of giving us a safe blanket to, if Jesse's not going to last long, who knows how much longer I have myself, so I'm just going to get this over with. Or it really seems like at that point he's going in guns blazing, as you can see from behind the seat. He pulls out his little revolver, his little stub, and basically he might go in there, he might go down shooting. Essentially, is what it looks like, because he's willing to do anything to save Jesse. At one point breaks into Jesse's home, sees that Jesse's phone's not there, and really just kind of in a panic state. because at this point, to finish off the episode, all we really know is Mike and Jesse are taking a drive, and that's really the last scene we see. So from the first time you're watching this, are you thinking that this is it for Jesse? Are you thinking like this is the end?
It seems that way, but Mike is an assassin for sure. But with no phone, that was a good touch by the writers, that he doesn't have any communication to get a hold of anybody. He doesn't have his gun with him. So yeah. At the end of it, I was thinking maybe they're just taking him out and going to beat him up, give him a good beating or something to kind of send a message. But it was a lot of uncertainty when I watched the episode. I'm glad these two are together for us because they go so well together.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and we'll get into that more into next episode named Shotgun. But yeah, just the conversation that Gus and Mike end up having, kind of, with the concern of what's happened to Jesse. Really, the first time I watched this, I was like, okay, well, this is it. Just because Gus's answer is so obscure and basically doesn't leave a real definitive answer on what they want to do. But instead, we know that Gus is a smart guy, and he's good at solving problems such as this one and dealing with junkies.
Yeah, I love the character of Gus as well, but I love the writers and how they script him, because you're right. Every conversation he leaves, he doesn't give a definitive answer. Like, he'll ask Mike, how's the situation? And he'll just give like okay, and then just leave the car. And then you're like, what does he think about this? You don't know and then it'll jump cut to later in episode or the next episode where he eliminates a cartel boss or he acts on it, and you never know until it happens in the present.
Yeah, a lot of quiet moves from Gustavo Fring for sure.
So yeah, like you said, the episode ends with them, Jesse and Mike driving out to God knows where. So we see Walt. He was at Jesse's. He's gone. He's calling Jesse again, but he knows no one's there. So he calls Saul and he says, I don't know what's going to happen, but all my money goes to Skyler. Give it to within a week. It should be with her. I don't know what's happening. Make sure she gets it, Saul. Like, make sure she gets it. And calls her and the kids, like I said. But like I said, he has his little snub 38. And what does he do? He's like a kamikaze pilot here. He's full tilt. He drives straight to Los Polos Hermanos.
Yeah, he's on the verge of, seems like snapping as he tries to look for Gus. He walks in, gun in his pocket. He looks pissed as he's ever looked, and basically just gets to the front, asks for Gus, has a stare off with the manager of the store, which I thought was really, really funny, because this girl can't be much older or younger than we are, Juggy, but she really does like give it back to him the few times we see her on this show.
Yeah, she's not afraid.
Yeah, no, not afraid whatsoever, and kind of backs him down a little bit. And Walter says, I can wait. I can wait for him. Just go talk to him and tell him to get him. He says it's Walter White. He'll know. He kind of played that card. Like, it's like if you were at a restaurant or something, it's like, it's Juggy. That the owner should know. Yeah. He played one of those cards.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right. And he goes, I saw his car. I know he's here. Go get him. And he's sitting there, and he kind of gets unnerved a little bit because this group of Spanish looking guys come in, and he's kind of, he's got holding the gun, but he gets a call, and it's from Mike. And Mike's like, Walter, what the hell are you doing? And he goes, where's Jesse? And he goes, he's with me. And he goes, okay. So he throws Jesse on the phone, and they have this very, very funny exchange where Jesse just gives him nothing.
Yeah, it's like Walter's been worried sick, and basically worried sick about where Jesse's been over the last course of an hour or two, thinking that he's probably going to die. And Jesse's just basically like, he's like, Jesse, where are you guys going? I don't know. Oh, are you okay? Well, I don't really know. I'm just driving. Yeah. And it's basically nothing, giving him nothing, but at the same sense, we know that it's Jesse's, new mind state where he's just, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about life and in general.
Yeah. And it gets to the point where it's bad because Walt says, put Mike back on the phone. And Mike gives nothing either. So he's with me for today, Walter. Go to the lab and cook. That's your job. So they kind of they hang up the phone, but Walt's not cool with this. He still doesn't trust them. So he goes behind the counter, barges through the door, and goes straight into Gus's office.
Yeah, only to find an empty office and an even more pissed off manager, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The manager is basically saying, sir, you can't be back here. This is office staff only. And, gives him the boot. Really embarrassing moment for Walter. The whole time he's kind of been on camera. He's got this new thing because he's on camera at his new lab. Now that he's seeing it, almost feels like Gus has eyes on him constantly. And I think that it's starting to make him a little paranoid now.
Absolutely. We see he hates being watched or being monitored. And that red light is on the cameras in the lab and then at Los Polos. And I think he feels like that's like an eye or something, kind of like, Lord of the Rings style. And it's like, watching him the whole time. So he's very uncomfortable with it. But he had the gun in the pocket loaded, but nothing came of it yet. Mike and Jesse are just driving in silence. But about halfway through the drive, Jesse kind of puts it together. Okay, am I about to be killed here? Like, he's not getting any information. They're in the middle of a desert. And what funny moment, he pulls out his keys. He's got a huge key ring and he kind of grabs one of them and kind of has this makeshift shiv. And he's ready to, go toe to toe with Mike if need be.
Yeah, it's kind of nice because you see this, actual fear of death / I want to live moment come out of Jesse, because he's like, okay, I might actually be in trouble here, and even though I want maybe I want to die, well, I don't want to die way out here for nothing. And Mike gets out of this basically deserted little shack looking area, and gets out, pops the trunk, grabs a shovel, goes and digs up something. And basically Jesse's kind of like just looking around like, is he going to get me? Like, is this it? And it's this intense moment where, Mike's walking right up to Jesse with the shovel and you're like, okay, he's going to get him. And he ends up just blowing right by him and digging up a hole.
Yeah, it's like this little hole in the ground. He digs up a bag of cash and Jesse's like, wait, what's going on? He goes, we got to do 6 of these today. I want to get them done before it gets dark out. So let's get back in the car. Let's go. We got a lot of driving to do today. So basically, in a sense, Shay, Jesse's on a ride along with Mike.
Yeah, exactly. It's not what we thought. It's kind of basically the polar opposite, where we thought maybe Mike was taking him out, but instead he seems to be getting deeper in, or at least he's, doing something else for Gus instead of just cooking meth.
Yeah. And we see they're basically a bunch of dead drops where they're getting cash. And second one, they're in an abandoned building. And it's funny because when Mike comes outside, Jesse's standing by the car with this, one hand over the other, kind of like you're, listening to national anthem, standing for the national anthem, but standing guard. And Mike's like, what the hell are you doing? And he kind of goes, I'm your bodyguard, right? Like, I'm your backup. Like, I gotta make sure you're okay. So he's just kind of standing in formation, acting as Mike's confidant in this sense.
When we very know Mike does not need a confidant. He's perfectly capable of taking care of himself. And if anything, someone needs to bodyguard Jesse because, his track record is not too squeaky clean.
No, he gets beat up a lot. And he gets in some tough situations. Show, yeah. So, yeah. But I love that scene. And so even Jesse pipes in, well, if I'm your guy, like, I think I need a gun. And Mike's like, no, you don't. And we pivot to this montage of them driving. And we clearly see it's a lot of driving. And Jesse is just bored out of his mind. He's not allowed to smoke in the car. So he starts just playing the drums, doing his little fallacies song, trying to put on the radio. Mike turns it off. He's playing with the seatbelt. He's dying of boredom.
Yeah, this is a regular thing for Mike, it seems, but for Jesse, this is going to be the most boring way to make a killing whatsoever, because he's used to, slinging meth probably at least 12 hours in a day, and now he's kind of just sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah, and eventually he just starts talking, asking question after question, and he's just, when is this ending? And am I part of the inner circle now? Like I'm like your right hand man. I think I'm the guy. And Mike just has had enough, and he goes, "No, you're not the guy. I had the guy, but he's dead, and now for some reason I have to babysit you. But shut up, and we're just gonna finish these drives today." But he's just had enough with Jesse and his just his stupid antics.
Yeah, and this kind of refers to something that we spoke about earlier the last couple of weeks in Victor, and it seems like Mike and Victor did have a pretty decent relationship, and we can only assume that Mike's reference is to Victor, and that he was kind of his right hand man, and he helped him along, and like we said, Mike might be still a little pissed off about this and the fact that Gus was so easy to just kill him for practically nothing, really.
Yeah, no, great point. Because I think he really obviously he liked Victor. He was good. They had a good working relationship where they didn't have to talk much, probably knowing Mike. They could just nonverbal communication and, get the work done and then move on from there. Jesse is the polar opposite of that. So Walt does do what he's told. He goes to the lab to cook by himself, but we see him, he's breathing heavy in the big suit. And then he gets on the forklift trying to move the big barrel, and he can't do it. It drops on the floor, and he kind of snaps at the camera saying, "Get me some help here."
Yeah, just yelling at the camera, basically saying, "I'm not working until I get Jesse back."
Mm-hmm.
And the door opens, and who comes out but Tyrese? And Walter just basically just blames on, just says, when is Jesse coming back? Like, this is a 2-man job. I can't be doing this by myself. It's not safe. Jesse runs the forklift. I don't do the forklift. And it's funny because Tyrese has the same, everyone from Gus's circle, will say, has the same theme. They're quiet men. They're all quiet men. None of them are chatty. Tyrese just walks up to the forklift, basically loads the barrel and says, "Where do you want it?" Yeah. And basically indirectly saying, like, "I'm going to work with you for the day while Jesse's gone."
Yeah. And what we're doing the work, Jesse's not coming, deal with it. And Walt is even more pissed off because he's not getting his way. So in the meantime, Walt and Skyler sign off on the car wash. So it is official now. I mentioned it. It happened the last episode, but they were dotting a few I's, crossing a few T's, but they've got it done. And Skyler is nervous about it, but Walt says they'll be fine. And then she's there, she goes, "Oh, I see a message." And it plays Walter's, and he's in this state where he thinks he might be killed. He says, "I love you and the kids. I'm just thinking about you." And this gesture of, the love and, Walt showing her that he cares clearly was tempting enough, because they end up in bed together.
They're getting after it in the bedroom, getting a little freaky. And it's funny because this isn't the reaction I thought. I thought Skyler would hear this and say, "What the hell did you get yourself into? Yeah. You're in danger." But she hears it a different way. She hears it as, "Oh, like Walter, Walter's starting to come around, and he clearly just saying how much he loves us, and basically takes it on the softer cheek, I guess you could say." And yeah, they kind of do it, and they're in bed together. Kind of nice moment. They're just talking. They're kind of being vulnerable to each other, and Walter Jr. kind of comes home and catches some of the action, we'll say.
Yeah, the jig's up because he sees the car in the driveway. He goes, and Walt answers first, "Hey, buddy, we'll be out in like 5 minutes." And he's just kind of like, ugh, he's kind of grossed out. But it's funny the next morning because he's at the same time he's happy that that his parents are back together, and he even pipes in that Skyler told him that Walt will be moving back in on Tuesday. So looks like Walter's going to be back home permanently.
And it's funny because Walter and Skylar talk about this, but when Skylar tells, it's when Walter's reaction to what Walter Jr. says about him moving back in, you think he'd be more excited, but he's kind of a little ticked. It's kind of like, oh, like you didn't really, she kind of announced it without really Walter giving the green light on it. And I think he's a little pissed that, he's not in total control of that whole situation.
Totally agree. And I think it's her making the decisions for the family when, he doesn't have control of, he's the breadwinner, but nobody knows it, or he's the breadwinner and everybody hates the way he went about it. He's the shitty husband and it affected their relationship. He's still that guy at heart that has the low self-esteem, that worked at Gray Matter and then had to become a chemistry teacher making, a very minimal salary. So I think it's in this sense, him being back for a letter word, pussy whipped, and the woman in the relationship dominating him and not allowing him to make his own decisions.
Yeah, because even though, it was on his own terms and he said, oh yeah, I'm coming home. And he was the one to say it to Walter Jr. and to basically agree to it. I'm sure it'd be fine. But because, now it's coming from Skylar, it seems like, he's used to making his own decisions at this point and he's a little pissed about it. But we'll get into that a little later. I believe now we're still in the montage of Jesse and Mike, and they come to what seems like their last location at dark, and Mike goes into this obscure building and nothing seems to be wrong, but Jesse's in the shotgun seat and he takes a look in the rear mirror and sees a man walking towards him with a shotgun.
Yeah, so he's like, oh crap. So what does he do? He puts the car in gear and he floors it going backwards. And this guy has to dive out of the way, almost getting hit by the car. Jesse smashes into his vehicle, jumps in the driver's seat, and takes off. In a frenzy. The guy gets in the car and starts tailing Jesse, and Mike just catches the last moment of it. He's coming outside, running after the vehicle, but he's basically just left there holding the bag, literally.
Yeah, this just seems like another attack like the one in the beginning of the last episode where the cartel are taking them out at these drops and taking out their product. And Mike's kind of walking on the side of the road. He's calling. He's like, "You're gonna have to come pick me up. The kid left me." Two vehicles tracing us, and sure enough, Jesse pulls up and says, "Get in." And he's like he is whenever a big event comes. Like he's kind of bouncing wall to wall. He's excited, but at the same time, he's kind of just like in a frenzy, I think. And, he's excited to tell Mike, and he goes, lights up a cigarette. He's like, oh, and Mike kind of gives him the green light saying, no, you did good, kid. Like, light it up in the car. So it was a big moment for Jesse as he feels like he accomplished and helped instead of just sitting in the car like he did all day.
Right. He was the hero, so to speak. Jesse had this big moment, and Mike, we even see him. He smiles. He says, "Smoke up, kid. You're good." And this is Jesse's shade to a T. He feels important. He feels wanted. Walter never gives him that feeling. He never has that. He's always second fiddle, or he's put down for being a junkie or being this and that. Where in this moment, he was the sole hero. He had to act on his feet, and he protected Mike and the product, and he got the job done.
There's even been times where Jesse's done well with Walter, and Walter says, "Oh, well, I would have done this differently," or "Oh, you still kind of critiques him in a sense, but he does get the nod and says, maybe not directly, but Mike does give him the good job, kid, by tell him to light up and ruin his lungs."
Right. So we see Mike goes to see Gus, and we learn that the whole thing was staged. This was one of Gus's guys or Mike's guys. He says, "I'll reimburse you for the cars, of course." But he goes, Jesse believes he was a hero. And, I think you're right. Like he's changed. Like, I think he's got a different mindset now. And clearly Gus's plan, maybe not to get Jesse completely away from Walt, but to start the transition was to get him part of the, get a working relationship with him, get him involved with Mike. And it seems to have worked for right now.
Yeah, you could say that whole act and was basically one of two things, was to basically test Jesse in the sense to see how he would do under a pressure like that. Would he, would he drive away? Would he leave Mike? Would he, try and do his best to take out the guys, or would he just basically hide and, let Mike get taken out? So it was kind of both. And it was also, Gus said it before, he's not going to use fear as a motivator. So he wasn't going to kill Jesse just because, he was a nuisance. Well, what's he going to do? He's going to kind of turn him, and he's going to do his best to keep him busy, but at the same time keep him under Mike's eye, because if he's working with Mike all the time, well, he can't get into trouble that way.
Right, and he might start to act more like Mike, who we know that's exactly who Gus likes. That's his ideal employee. Yeah, he has no questions. He doesn't complain. He just does his job and he goes home. And I think that's exactly who he's looking for. So the next day, Walt gets to the lab, and who's already there? Jesse. And he's listening to music, and Walt's like, "Jesse, are you okay?" He goes, "Yeah, just crushing the ice." And he's got all the blue hammering it with the stick or whatever. And he says, "What did you do yesterday?" "I just drove around with Mike, and I helped him when we were going to get robbed, Just taking care of business. I'm taking care of business here with the meth. Like, let's get to cooking. Let's get to work. Let's TCB." And completely different Jesse.
Yes, it seems like it's kind of a motivator, and he goes, "Oh shoot, I can work until this time, but and he basically says, I have two jobs, and his two jobs are to cook meth and at the same time work with Mike, and go on these little ride-alongs." And he's like, "Yeah, I guess I'm like Mike's guy." And Walter's a little worried, because he's like, "Well, that's not a good thing, because that just means he's getting closer to Gus and further away from himself."
Yeah, and he even tries to put him down a little bit, because he goes, "Jesse, you're there one day. You're not the guy. Like, you're not, like, they don't view you as important." He goes, "Well, I don't know. Mike's bringing me out again, so clearly I'm more important than you think I am." And but again, you're right. It's Jesse getting pulled, and the thing is, Jesse really, actually, even though they talk very little, he likes Mike. We've known that from the beginning. He seems to have this connection with Mike, and I don't really know. We learn more about it. We see it more as the show goes on, but he sees something in Mike that he really is gravitated to.
Yeah, so that's kind of what and that story kind of lines for the end of the episode. Really, it kind of just gives it, you could see what's happening, and in the sense that Gus is trying to, get these two to work together to basically, one, get Jesse away from this lifestyle that he's implemented himself into by surrounding himself with just toxic, poisonous people, and just putting him to work all the time. Because if he's working 24 hours of the day, well, obviously he can't get into all that much trouble, because he's going to be too busy.
Right. So the last part of this episode is super interesting. So the Whites are at the Schraders again, Hank and Marie's for dinner once again, and Walter is he's under a lot of stress. Jesse thinking he might die. He's been through a lot, and he's pounding the wine into him. He's basically drank a bottle himself. He goes crack another one in the kitchen, and he takes a good swig of it before he comes back. And Hank's talking about, they're talking about the car wash, and they talk about that, but the topic pivots to Gail. And Hank says, "Yeah, I'm off the case, but I got my Heisenberg, but we talk about smart people in life, but this guy is a genius. He's 5-star. He's a chef. Like, he can cook anything. He could have saved humanity if he actually used his brain for something productive and something good." And Walt is just sitting there with his good get his good jag on, and he's just not having it.
No, you can see him getting more, at one point it's basically scoffing at Hank, saying and he hates that he's not getting credit. And this is just a repeating topic that goes on and on over the show, where Walter is just like, if he was probably up to him, he'd probably just blurt it out like, no, like it was me. I cooked that meth. Like I am Heisenberg.
Yeah.
But Walter goes, he can't do that. So what does he do? He's got a second plan. He goes, yeah, I've seen the work. I looked at Gail's notepad, Hank, and he may be smart, but I think he was, I think he was copying somebody else, or I think this was somebody else's work. I don't think that this was Gail. Like, even though he seems like this genius, he come up to be, looks just as easy that he could have copied off somebody else. And he even goes, well, maybe your Heisenberg is still out there. And you got to remember, he's pretty drunk. I'm sure he probably wouldn't have gone that far if he didn't have that much wine into him. But clearly, it's his downfall.
Yeah, what a mistake. And like you said, just the ego on Walter to blurt this out for no good reason. And so Hank's like, interesting. He trusts Walt's opinion higher than almost anyone. I mean, he goes to him all the time for advice. So he goes, okay. So we pivot to the next day. And in these 2 episodes, Shay, we do see a change in Hank. He's more of Hank. He seems more upbeat. He's nicer to Marie. He's in the wheelchair. He's not in bed all the time. And he's at the table and Marie comes in. He goes, hey, babe. And she goes, what are you doing? And he goes, well, Tim dropped off some more file boxes and Hank is, I'm back. I think there's more to this. I want to look into it. Like, I really want to get to the bottom of it. Is that okay? And Marie is beyond thrilled. She's seeing her husband back. And she kind of says, like, can I make you some coffee? And he goes, yeah, that'd be great. And I really enjoyed this moment because you just see the two kind of reconnect and Hank become the nicer husband that we've seen earlier in the show.
Yeah, I think we spoke about it last week. The fact that, he's got his work underneath him now, and he's got something to motivate him, outside this house that he's been trapped in because he's been paralyzed basically. He's more of himself. He's more alert, and he's not the slob. You can tell, like, he started shaving again. Before, when he was kind of just laying in bed all day, not doing anything, he was just unshaved, uncared for. But now he's taking care of himself a little bit better. He seems like when he was speaking with Walter and Skyler, he's in a better mood. He's uppity, and this is more of the Hank we've come to see. And it is obviously a good thing for their relationship because, like we seen before at the beginning of the season, they're just off to a rough start. That whole opening house episode where that was basically Marie trying to cope with the fact that her relationship's kind of gone to shit. Yeah. And now you could see it getting a lot better, but this is due to Hank chasing Walter again. And obviously this is all Walter's fault.
Right. So she's making coffee and he goes, She goes, what's up? He goes, well, I just noticed something in this picture. This guy that I'm chasing, my genius, the scientist, he's all vegan and he's, all natural products. So he goes, since when does a vegan go shopping at a fast food chicken restaurant? And all we see in the picture is a bag from the Los Pollos Hermanos restaurant. And it's a great way to end the episode because it puts Hank on the trail of the real culprit here in Gus. But I love the ending of this episode.
Yeah, kind of like a couple episodes prior when he's looking at Gail's. It's the end of the episode, and he's looking at Gail's notepad. Same thing, like Hank is just kind of getting back into it, and you see him creeping. And even though he can't do a ton because he's kind of stuck at home, he's still putting things together, and he's still being Hank and figuring things out. Kind of like when he basically traced everything back to Jesse's RV and stolen, the stolen RV that he found. Well, kind of getting here, he's starting to get that snowball going, and as we progress throughout the season, we see that he gets further and further into his lead. Yeah,
so he's got an early sniff of a trail here because it does make a lot of sense. Why would he have a chicken bag? It's completely out of character. It'd be like me going to a vegan restaurant. Why the hell? What, something's up. If you ever see me at a vegan chain, then something's going on with me anyway. There's your
something's very wrong. Yes.
Telltale sign that I'm up to no good. But yeah, these are episodes 4 and 5 of season 4. We're getting to the midway point of the season, Shay, and this is where it really starts to get interesting. The trail's getting hotter. We got Jesse kind of getting back in it. Yeah, Gus becomes more and more involved. This is when the season really heats up for me.
Yeah, just like we said, this because there's 13 episodes. Obviously, this comes to the mid-season finale, you could say, that we'll cover next week. Really, really good one from what I can remember. If I'm thinking of the right event that happens, you got the cartel, like you said, sneaking back in. They get more and more of a presence throughout the season, and it does just get better and better, really. And obviously, this new Jesse Mike combination that we're really seeing for the first time, that gets more involved. And I know, just like me, I think that you kind of love that aspect that Jesse's they're kind of curing Jesse by not sending him to rehab, but kind of just putting him with Mike, which is kind of like a rehab center. So
right, yeah, no, hardly any cigarettes, no booze, no drugs. It's very no talking. It's just all work, and you kind of forget about your past indiscretions. But yeah, we'll talk about episode 6 and 7 next week. I know we texted about the Sopranos movie that's coming out, I believe, tomorrow. It's either tomorrow or next week.
No, you're right. Tomorrow,
yeah. Do you plan on seeing that in theaters, or are you gonna wait for that?
As a fan, it's one of the to me, one of the greatest shows in all of history at HBO, obviously. And no, I think I'll check it out. I watched a couple interviews with it's got an unbelievable cast. I think that playing his son kind of reminds me of when in Straight Outta Compton, when Ice Cube's son, his name's kind of blank. He plays his father. This is kind of the same deal, and maybe not. Obviously, it's fictional characters, but at the same sense, I think it's going to be a great movie. I think he looks a lot like him, which makes the character even way more believable. But no, October is a month of movies, Juggy, and there's going to be a ton coming out. A couple great scary movies for Halloween just around the bend. I got down the new Halloween movie, Halloween Kills. Seems like Jamie Lee Curtis just can't put that franchise to bed, but that's all right.
They like to drag that one out.
They've been dragging that one out for quite some time. I watched the trailer for this Antlers movie. It looks pretty interesting too. That's another scary one. But anything else other than the Many Saints of Newark? That's Newark. Yeah, that's the Sopranos movie. Was there anything else you're looking forward to?
I like watching James Bond movies in theaters. There's something about it that I like. I can pass go on outside. I'm just watching it at home. Like the last James Bond I hated, Skyfall. So I hope this one's better.
The last one was Spectre. Did you like Spectre?
No, I hated that one, man. Whatever the last one was, I hated. Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel the further Craig goes on with his movies, the less important and the less reasonable they can get?
Yeah, because I love Casino Royale. I thought that movie was great. Movie. I thought that was really like a fantastic film. But yeah, they've gotten progressively worse for me. I don't know why. There's no real reason. I kind of look at Jason Bourne the same ways. More and more they get worse.
Yeah.
But hopefully this is a good one. It's his last one. So hopefully it's not too Fast and Furious-esque. It's somewhat realistic. That's all I'm hoping for. But I know you talked about it. Dune looks good. You're more sci-fi than me, but I'm gonna give it a go. Timothy Chalamet is good. You got Matt Damon and Ben Affleck who are good as well. So,
the last duel, you mean?
Yeah, that movie.
That looks like a really, really, really. I feel like that's a dad movie in the sense that you and your old man would go to a flick like that. Right. But it does look really, really good. Great cast in that one. Adam Driver, Matt Damon square off together. No, I'm looking forward to Dune though. That does look like a very intriguing movie. It's a movie they spent a lot of money making, so I hope it kind of lives up to the hype. And it's got one of those casts where you can just name names off and off. I think Batista even.
He's in there. I'm looking at the cast now. He is in it. Jason Momoa.
Yeah, Jason Momoa. That I see his name all the time. The guy who plays Timothy Chalamet's father, I forget his name. Isaac.
Oh, Oscar Isaac.
Great actor too. He's a quality guy. But a lot of great actors coming to that one. The French Dispatch, which is Wes Anderson's new movie, that one looks pretty good. That's another movie with a ton of great actors in it. That's at end of the month. Movie I thought you would like, Jug, would be South of Heaven, the new Jason Sudeikis movie.
Look coming out this now. South of Heaven.
Yeah, so it's called South of Heaven. It's a movie about him. They let him out of jail to spend his last year with his wife. She's got cancer, but then it turns into a whole bunch of other things. I know, like, I just know from past experience, like Sudeikis, obviously really doing really well with to the Ted Lasso show from Apple, but I know this could be a branch out for him into film. I know he's done a lot of comedy films, but this could be a good, this could be a nice little change for him into something a little bit dramatic. Last Night in Soho looks like a great movie too. Anna Joy Taylor, great actor. Hopefully, that comes at the end of the month as well. So tons and tons of great movies. I feel like this could be the month of movies for the year. So I'm excited. I'll probably try to catch 2 or 3 of them now. And but like you said, the Many Saints of Newmark is definitely one on my list, and so is the James Bond one.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it looks Mission. I know Mission Impossible, and that was supposed to come out this month. I got pushed back, and Goose and Maverick. What's that movie?
Oh,
Top Gun.
Top Gun.
Yeah, that
new Top Gun movie.
That'll be terrible or really good. There's no in between.
I have a feeling it's going to be really, really bad. I don't have any bias against Miles Teller, but I find Miles Teller movies can be a bit much, and they can be bad.
That movie he did with Jonah Hill could have been really good, and it wasn't. Unfortunately,
no, it was not that great. No, I agree. Yeah, War Dogs could add a lot of potential to be a sick movie.
Yeah, that movie.
But he's been in a lot of those flicks where like, oh, this has a lot of potential, and just kind of turns out to be trash. But who knows? Yeah,
I'm excited that movies are back. It's been like 18. Yeah. There's been movies thrown it, here and there, but to see, really like big budget films come back, and I even saw that in 2022. Ozark it will be on Netflix, both parts. That's sooner than I thought it would be back. I'm stoked for that, to see the final season of Ozark. So it's just good to see the movies are coming back, and they can do they can start filming and getting back to normal. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, I know. Even though around here feels like we're going in the opposite direction, but at least we'll get some good cinema coming up for sure.
Yeah, we can watch some cinema. Hopefully, when we get in there in the dark, nobody can see me without a mask on, and we'll just be A-okay. But
any big plans for you coming up this week?
This week, well, now that I see all the movies, I might go tomorrow night or something. Maybe, who knows? Hang out with Dirk. She's barking. Watch this really good college football weekend. There's some great Ole Miss, Alabama is a great game. You got Arkansas, Georgia, the number 2 and number 8 ranked teams in the country. Cincinnati, Notre Dame, number 7 and number 9 meeting. So a lot of big matchups this weekend. And then, of course, you got the NFL. You got some baseball. So the last weekend of the regular season. So still a lot to be decided down the stretch. So some good sports. And then we'll podcast next week. And me and you will be reuniting in Fred City to watch my sister play her first game as a UMB Red.
Excited for the chance. And I know it's going to be good. I know how much you love women's hockey. And yeah,
I like it more than I used to.
You've definitely warmed up before. My friend here would have probably never taken in a women's hockey game, but you definitely took the turn, and you're a lot better now. Look forward to that. We're going to be speaking a couple times because we have this podcast.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
true.
We speak Wednesday about a little NHL preview, which is just around the corner with friend of the pod, Casey Ward. So it's going to be nice to have him back. Yeah, and I'm excited to hear some takes. I got some questions for both you guys I want to ask. I had some things I've been stirring up and thinking about, but
I like it.
Looking forward to that. Going to be seeing you a few times next week.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing your top 10 player rankings.
Yeah, probably 5 or 6 Leafs in there, and then I'll sprinkle in some other.
Peter Mrazek rising up the ranks game by game. But no, great pod today, Shay, and we'll talk like you said a couple times next week.
Good.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in. I'll be back later to talk with Ben Murray about week 4 in the NFL. So tune in for that. But lots coming here onto the point. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk soon.